Let's talk briefly, though, about the succession.
Right, yeah. Yeah, so this is the crazy thing. So I used to think that apostolic succession could only be established by a priori arguments. So for instance, you just say, yeah, I mean, like, but wouldn't it make sense if Christ established this institution that, there would be this enduring line of successors? But then, and so like that argument only goes so far with a Protestant who might be willing to just to deny straight up, yeah, after the apostles, the whole thing just ended, right? And then you just had the general dispensation of the gospel among these bishops and presbyters. But what I discovered was actually, I was going on a debate, I was doing a debate on Sola Scriptura on the channel The Gospel Truth. And as I was preparing for this debate, I was looking through The Life and Times of Jesus the Messiah by Alfred Edersheim, who's a famous Jewish convert to Anglicanism. And Edersheim pointed out that the lower tribunals and the greater tribunals of Second Temple Judaism, that is, of the Sanhedrin and the lower courts, they originally were ordained by the laying on of hands.
Okay.
And whenever they would ordain, they had 3 men present. And at least one of the men ordained had to be able to trace his ordination through Joshua and to Moses, or else he just didn't have the same authority.
Wow.
Right. And then I started looking further into, I think it's Lois Jacobs' book, The Oxford Companion to the Jewish Religion. And I read her entry on ordination, and she likewise pointed out that in the Second Temple period, which is the time of the New Testament, they believed that you had to have ordination through Joshua and to Moses in order to be able to serve on the Sanhedrin and issue valid binding rulings on all of Israel. And so at that point then I realized that, okay, in the New Testament, clearly the laying on of hands was used to ordain people. And we know that Paul himself was once a Pharisee. And even in the Acts 15 council, there were Pharisees who had converted to Christianity who were present too. And so this is really part of the makeup of the church, right? You have the Jewish legal structures being implemented into the ecclesiology of Christ, into the church that he built. And so, even the words binding and loosing were words to describe the rabbinic power to interpret scripture and discipline the communities, right? And so at this point then I started realizing that when Irenaeus and others are talking about this doctrine of apostolic succession, they aren't making it up.
I see.
Irenaeus is not just using a tool against the Gnostics. This is in the Judaism of the time of Christ. And we know clearly that Christ passed on the teachings of the legal structures of his time, right? Because in part we know because Jesus is the new Moses. In Deuteronomy 18:15, Moses says that a prophet like you, like me, will rise out from among you, and you have to listen to everything he tells you. In the New Testament, Jesus is constantly described as this prophet like Moses, who does things like Moses. In the Gospel of Luke, Jesus ascends the mountain with the 70 or the 72, although 70 is probably a more accurate number, because in the Old Testament, in the book of Numbers, when Moses ascends the mountain, he takes 70 elders with him. Okay, so I also looked and I read the works of the Rabbi Uriah Kaplan. I don't know if I'm saying his first name right, but it's the Handbook of Jewish Thought. And in the second volume of that compendium, he talks about how the Jews believed that before the construction of the third temple, right? Before the construction of the third temple, the Messiah would come and the Sanhedrin would be redeemed. It would be restored. And they base this on Isaiah chapter 1, verse 25 to 27, when God through Isaiah makes the promise to the Jewish people that I will restore your judges as they were in the beginning, as they were in the days of Moses. So I was reading a book edited by Marcus Bachmuel called, I think it's Studies in Early Christian Ecclesiology or something like that. And there's a chapter by Michael Goulder, and Michael Goulder points out the Apostolic College of the New Testament is clearly a redeemed Sanhedrin.
Wow.
So Jesus clearly established and rebuilt the Jewish legal structures of his time.
Wow.
And so the magisterium, Matt, is not this Roman invention. It's a very old Jewish institution that goes back to Moses.
If you like that clip, be sure to like and subscribe. Cheers.